Hello and welcome back. Today we explore the most shocking British police corruption scandals that shattered public trust, exposed systemic failures and raised urgent questions about who holds power and who holds it to account. For an institution tasked with upholding justice, beneath the veneer of authority and order, a series of corruption scandals have exposed deep fractures in the system. Scandals that not only betrayed the public but also shook the very foundations of British democracy. From the manipulation of evidence and collusion with criminal networks to institutional cover-ups, these cases have revealed a troubling pattern of abuse, impunity and silence. We explore some of these cases. In doing so, it asks a pressing question. When those sworn to protect become perpetrators, who holds them accountable? I think it's important first to look at the Baroness Casey report, which was published in 2023. If you do want to head straight into the scandals, the timestamp is in the description. The Baroness Casey review was commissioned by the Met Police Service in February 2022, following the murder of Sarah Everard and other troubling incidents involving serving officers, which we will look at in this video. It concluded with a 300-page final report published in March 2023, examining the Met's culture, behaviour standards and public trust challenges. Baroness Louise Casey was tasked with assessing whether the Met's leadership, recruitment, vetting, training, culture and communications aligned with the standards Londoners expect. Her report included identifying failings and recommending concrete steps to restore confidence in Britain's largest police force. The key findings of the report are that the Met Police Force is institutionally racist, misogynistic and homophobic. Black, Asian and minority ethnic officers face discrimination and are 81% more likely than white colleagues to enter the misconduct system. Female officers and staff routinely encounter sexism, with the force failing to protect victims of domestic abuse or abuse of power for sexual purposes. Deep-seated homophobia means nearly 1 in 5 LGBTQ+ employees have experienced homophobic behaviour, and 30% report being bullied for their identity. Widespread bullying affects 22% of staff with protected characteristics and 33% of those with long-term illnesses or disabilities, while predatory conduct often goes unrecorded or dismissed. A pervasive culture of denial, we know best, leads to a tick-box approach to reform, silencing whistleblowers and discouraging genuine reflection on the issues. These findings expose long-standing cultural flaws and offered a blueprint for transformational change. By highlighting institutional racism, sexism and a culture that protects wrongdoers over victims, the report has driven national conversations about policing ethics and accountability. Its recommendations underpin ongoing reform efforts within the Met and serve as a model for other forces grappling with similar issues. As I was creating this video, a panorama investigation was released on the BBC. The undercover investigation revealed serving Met police officers at the central London station called for immigrants to be shot, revelled in the use of force and were dismissive of our claims. After the investigation concluded, the BBC sent a detailed list of allegations to the Met. They suspended 8 officers and 1 staff member and took 2 more officers off frontline duties. Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley said the behaviour outlined by the programme was disgraceful and totally unacceptable. But now let's head straight into the scandals, and first I think it's important to start off with the Sarah Everard case, as this led to the Baroness Casey report. The abduction, and murder of 33-year-old marketing executive Sarah Everard by serving Metropolitan Police Officer Wayne Couzens in March 2021 sent shockwaves across the UK and precipitated a profound crisis in public trust towards law enforcement. The case not only exposed the horror of a female professional being brutally targeted during a routine walk home, but also laid bare systemic failures within the Met that allowed a predatory officer to operate unchecked. On the evening of the 3rd of March 2021, Sarah left a friend's home near Clapham Common around 9 p.m. for the roughly 50-minute walk back to Brixton, a route that she had travelled safely on many occasions before. Born on the 14th of June 1987 in Surrey, Sarah was known for her kindness, intelligence and successful career in marketing, having recently secured a senior role in London. When she failed to meet her boyfriend the next day and went unresponsive, her family reported her missing, triggering a large-scale search operation. Wayne Couzens, a Metropolitan Police officer assigned to the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command, posed as an undercover officer conducting a COVID-19 compliance check to handcuff Sarah and force her into his vehicle. He then abducted Ard and took her life. He then left her in Kent. In September 2021, Couzens pleaded guilty and received a whole life sentence, ensuring he will die in prison. In the days after she disappeared, Scotland Yard mobilised dozens of officers from Specialist Crime Command, scoring hours of CCTV footage and door-to-door inquiries around Clapham Common and the route Sarah had taken. The Marine Policing Unit also searched nearby ponds, while Missing Person Appeals urged the public to check private and local surveillance. Despite these efforts and the early investigation, it could not undo the horrors perpetrated, but this should have never happened. Multiple missed opportunities allowed Couzens to progress to lethal violence. In 2015, Kent police failed to investigate an allegation of indecent exposure properly, despite clear evidence tying a vehicle he owned to the incident. That same year, colleagues in the Civil Nuclear Department nicknamed him the Arist and were aware of his attraction to violent images and videos, yet he continued to advance into firearms roles without his vetting records flagging these red flags. An inquiry highlighted a pervasive culture of misogyny, a complacency towards violence against women and girls within the Met, noting that officers lack training, motivation and resources to treat S-based offences seriously. Vetting and re-vetting processes were found chaotic and inadequate, missing indicators of Couzens' prior S offending and unmanaged personal debts that should have triggered further investigation or dismissal. Following this inquiry, the Met was placed in special measures in June 2022, grading its crime investigation and offender management as inadequate, with a 60% no further action rate on child image cases and inconsistent investigative standards across neighbourhood units. Inquiries underscored that more vetting, robust misconduct recording and a zero-tolerance approach to sexist and predatory behaviour could have disrupted Couzens' pattern and possibly saved Sarah's life. The Stephen Port murders is the scandal we look at next. Between June 2014 and September 2015, Stephen Port took the lives of 4 young men in East London, exploiting dating apps and giving them lethal overdoses of GHB. The ensuing investigations exposed catastrophic police failures, allowing Port's crime to continue unchecked. Port targeted men he met on the Grindr app, luring them to his Barking flat. His victims were Anthony Walgate, who was 23, Gabriel Cavari, who was 22, Daniel Whitworth, who was 21, and Jack Taylor, who was 25. Port's method was chillingly consistent. He invited victims for drinks or to continue the evening at his home. He spiked their drinks with GHB, a date R drug. After SA, he took their lives. He then put them near his Barking flat. These repeated patterns should have alerted investigators to a serial offender very early on. Despite the suspicious similarities across the 4 deaths, the police treated each as an isolated, unexplained death. Specialist homicide detectives were not immediately engaged, and basic investigation steps were often skipped. Only after the fourth death did a murder inquiry commence, by which time 3 more men had been killed. Multiple inquiries, including a coroner's inquest, identified core problems that allowed Port's killings to continue. Poor training and supervision for officers responding to unexpected deaths, unacceptable record keeping and confusing case management systems, failure to send critical exhibits for forensic examination and mishandling of property, confusing policies with inadequate intelligence and crime analysis processes, meaning officers relied on luck to link deaths, lack of professional curiosity, minimal house-to-house inquiries and no routine checks to establish time or cause of death. In December 2021, an inquest jury concluded that police failures directly contributed to the deaths of the final 3 victims. The jury described fundamental failings in early investigations, noting that a specialist murder team should have taken over after the first death. Coroner Sarah Monroe indicated she would issue a prevention of further deaths report to address these shortcomings. The Independent Office for Police Conduct reopened its probe in 2022 and announced gross misconduct investigations into 8 current and former Met police officers for potential breaches of professional standards, including equality, diversity duties and responsibility. Meanwhile, a report warned in April 2023 that the Met has still not learnt from failures in the Port case and could repeat them without decisive action. The brutal killing of private investigator Daniel Morgan in March 1987 shocked the South East London and revealed deep flaws in the Met Police Service's handling of murder inquiries. Despite 6 investigations and multiple arrests, his murder remains unsolved, raising questions about corruption, incompetence, and accountability within the force. Subsequent independent reviews have exposed a pattern of concealment and institutional self-protection that denied justice to Morgan's family. Daniel John Morgan, born on the 3rd of November 1949, co-founded Southern Investigations and built a reputation for tenacity and attention to detail. On the 10th of March 1987, after meeting his business partner Jonathan Rees at the Golden Lion pub in Sydenham, he was found dead in the car park, his skull fractured by an axe blow. At the time of his death, Daniel Morgan was privately investigating corruption within the Metropolitan Police. His family and later official reports believe he was killed to prevent him from exposing a network of corrupt police officers. Morgan was gathering evidence that he intended to expose. Sergeant Sid Fillery, who later joined Morgan's firm, was assigned to the case, setting the stage for conflicts of interest and potential cover-ups. There were multiple mistakes made. Between 1987 and 1988, initial murder inquiry led by officers with links to Southern Investigations, failing to secure evidence or properly search the crime scene. Between 1987 to 2011, 6 Metropolitan Police and other force inquiries. 67 people arrested, including 8 serving or former officers, but no charges led to conviction. Between 2009 and 2011, the Old Bailey trial collapsed after key evidence from the supergrasses were ruled inadmissible. Between 2013 and 2021, the Daniel Morgan Independent Panel convened, publishing a damning report in June 2021 on institutional corruption. Between 2022 and 2023, the Met Police accepted all 9 DMIP recommendations and reached a confidential settlement with Morgan's family, accompanied by an apology from the Commissioner. The report exposed a form of institutional corruption, whereby the Met protected its reputation over the integrity of the murder inquiry. The panel found that the crime scene was neither secured nor searched. Suspects were tipped off about arrests, and professional incompetence went unacknowledged. Families were misled by unwarranted assurances, and senior officers resisted transparency, compounding grief and eroding public trust. In March 2022, the Met publicly accepted every recommendation, pledging reforms to vetting, case management and a family liaison protocols. A dedicated anti-corruption command was strengthened, and the homicide investigations now undergo community panel reviews. In July 2023, Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley issued an unreserved apology to Morgan's family and agreed a confidential settlement acknowledging liability for officer failings. Morgan's family have vocalised that they believe he was killed to prevent him from exposing the Met Police. In February 2022, the Independent Office for Police Conduct published a damning report on a private WhatsApp and Facebook group used by officers based at the Charing Cross police station. The disclosures revealed violent misogyny, racism and homophobia, and bullying disguised as banter, provoking widespread outrage and prompting urgent calls for cultural reform within the Metropolitan Police Service. The messages, dated from 2016 to 2018, emerged during a probe into separate allegations that a serving officer had S with a drunk person in custody. Unusually, the watchdog released certain parts of this conversation to illustrate the behaviour it described as sickening, making public for the first time evidence of the depraved attitudes some officers privately shared. Officers in the group traded grotesque jokes and slurs, including statements celebrating or joking about "are." Some saying, "I would happily "are you." If I was single, I would happily "are you." I would chloroform you. And domestic violence, "knock a bird about and she will love you." Human nature. Calls for violence against black children, as well as language used towards disabled people and the LGBTQ+ individuals. F you, Bender. Though also nicknames, making a joke such as McRapey Raperson, alluding to rumours of officers abusing their power for S purposes. These exchanges were repeatedly downplayed by participants as harmless laddish banter when challenged, underscoring a culture that tolerated abuse and silenced victims. The formal investigation began in March 2018. Its report concluded that the unit's leadership failed to challenge or report the messages, breaching standards of duty and integrity. The watchdog criticised the Met's handling of misconduct referrals and highlighted a tendency to minimise sexist, racist and homophobic conduct rather than confront it. The findings led to disciplinary proceedings against 14 officers, 2 dismissed for gross misconduct and placed on the barred list, 2 found guilty of misconduct with 1 receiving a written warning, 4 subject to performance improvement measures, 9 remain serving in the Met, and 1 who resigned has since returned in a civilian contractor role. These outcomes were widely criticised as insufficient given the severity of the offences and the damage inflicted on public trust. The scandal laid bare the cultural failings at Charing Cross, an environment that prioritised loyalty over accountability, inadequate supervision allowing predatory behaviour to flourish, a dismissal of complaints under the guise of humour preventing early intervention, weak vetting and performance monitoring which should have been flagged officers with a history of misogynistic or racist views. Taken together, these factors illustrated how informal channels like WhatsApp could become echo chambers for extreme views when oversight is lacking. David Carrick, a serving Metropolitan Police officer, was sentenced to life imprisonment in February 2023 after admitting dozens of R's and S offences against 12 women. His conviction exposed a catalogue of missed opportunities by the Met's own Professional Standards Department to investigate serious allegations spanning nearly 2 decades. Carrick served as a firearms officer within the Met's Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command between 2003 and 2020. He preyed on women he met socially and abused his position of trust, ultimately being unmasked as one of Britain's worst ever S offenders. He received a sentence of 30 years in prison as a minimum term. Multiple reports were made against Carrick between 2002 and 2021, yet internal misconduct processes failed at every turn. 2002, a former partner reported assault and harassment. Carrick's line manager spoke to him, but no referral was made to the Met's Police Professional Standards. 2 inspectors would have faced misconduct proceedings had they not since retired. 2016, another partner's complaint led to a criminal inquiry by Hampshire Police, but no charges. The DPS was informed yet failed to open a misconduct investigation. 2 officers were later slated for misconduct meetings for this oversight. 2019, an assault allegation was referred to the Hertfordshire Police Force and then to DPS. Again, no internal misconduct action followed. 2 chief inspectors were subjected only to a reflective practice review process rather than formal discipline. 2021, a report of R&S assault passed through Sussex Police Force. The Met's internal review deemed there was insufficient evidence for gross misconduct, so Carrick had no case to answer for. The Independent Office for Police Conduct launched 4 formal investigations into the Met's handling of allegations against Carrick. Its findings prompted disciplinary proceedings against 1 detective sergeant, gross misconduct hearing, 3 officers and 1 staff member, misconduct meetings, all formally attached to the Met's DPS. Carrick's case revealed deep-rooted professional standard failures. Inadequate vetting and re-vetting allowed an officer facing multiple allegations to retain firearms duties. A culture of deference within the DPS led to reports being received but never progressed. Negligence meant critical inquiries were closed without follow-up or proper evidence review. This enabled Carrick to operate for years unchecked. At the trial, 13 testimonies were heard by women. He was charged with 5 counts of indecent assault, 2 counts of R and 1 count of SA. The Hillsborough disaster, which claimed the lives of 96 Liverpool Football Club fans during an FA Cup semi-final on the 15th of April 1989, remains one of the darkest chapters in British policing history. Beyond the immediate tragedy, the event exposed failures in crowd management, accountability and truth-telling. Police failings led to the disaster and the cover-up that delayed justice for decades. The disaster unfolded at Hillsborough Stadium in Sheffield, where South Yorkshire Police were responsible for crowd control. Chief Superintendent David Duckenfield made the critical decision to open an exit gate to relieve congestion outside the stadium. This led to a surge of fans into already overcrowded central pens, resulting in a fatal crush. Key failings included poor crowd monitoring. Officers failed to monitor crowd density within the pens despite clear signs of distress. Lack of planning. There was no effective emergency response plan and communication between officers was inadequate. Negligent command decisions. Duckenfield's failure to close the tunnel leading to the pens was later admitted as a direct cause of the deaths. The immediate cover-up. In the aftermath, police leadership sought to deflect blame. Duckenfield falsely claimed that fans had forced the gate open, a lie repeated to Football Association officials and the media. This narrative painted supporters as unruly and intoxicated, fueling a smear campaign. The coroner, Dr. Stephen Popper, ordered blood alcohol tests on all victims, implying fan behaviour contributed to the tragedy. Criminologist Phil Scraton described this decision as unprecedented and showed an institutional bias, institutional collusion and media manipulation. The cover-up extended beyond the police. The Hillsborough Independent Panel revealed that senior officers met the day after the disaster to coordinate a narrative blaming drunken, ticketless fans. Officers' statements were altered to remove criticism of police actions, and the media, most notoriously The Sun, amplified false claims. This conclusions infected the criminal justice system, delaying accountability and undermining public trust. Families of the victims endured decades of denial, misinformation and legal obstruction. The 2016 inquest finally ruled that the 96 victims were unlawfully killed due to gross negligence by the police. Duckenfield was later tried but acquitted, highlighting the difficulty of securing justice even after institutional failings are exposed. The Independent Office for Police Conduct launched investigations into misconduct and criminal liability, but many officers had retired, limiting consequences. The Hillsborough disaster was not only a tragedy of mismanagement but a profound betrayal of public trust. The police failings on the day were compounded by a deliberate cover-up that obstructed justice and vilified innocent victims. Hillsborough stands as a sobering reminder of the need for transparency, accountability and reform in public institutions. And that concludes our video today. The high-profile scandals of recent years, from the Met's institutionally racist and misogynistic culture to the murder of Sarah Everard by a serving officer, as well as the appalling breach of trust at crime scenes, have exposed how those sworn to protect can become perpetrators, shattering public confidence in policing itself. When officers cross that line, accountability falls to independent bodies. The Independent Office for Police Conduct investigates the most serious allegations. Chief constables can also challenge misconduct findings through appeals to the Police Appeals Tribunal, adding a further layer of oversight to ensure sanctions are fair and transparent. However, true accountability depends on a vigilant public, free press and robust parliamentary scrutiny demanding that no officer stands above the law. As always, thanks so much for watching, and until next time.